All right, number 2, find the root if it is a real number. And just real quick, you might be asking yourself, well, what does that even mean? What do you mean find the root if it is a real number? Aren't all numbers real? Well, no, right? And we're going to get into that a little bit later on in the practice test here, and you'll see that some numbers are in fact imaginary numbers, right? And your mind might be exploding at that concept, right? What do you mean imaginary numbers? Well, we'll get there, so don't worry about that just yet. But what this is saying, or what it's referring to, is you'll recall from class that you cannot take the square root of a negative number. So negative radical 625 over 9 is not the same as plugging a negative under the radical, right? Here the negative is outside the radical. Here the negative is under the radical. These two things are not the same thing. And so when your index or root, right, the number that is here, and again, just for review, when there's no number written here, see how they didn't give us a number here? It's automatically understood to be a 2. When that number is even, so if that's a 2 or a 4 or a 6 or an 8, you cannot have a negative under the radical, otherwise you get imaginary numbers. And we'll learn how to deal with that later on in this course, in the chapter. But for right now, we're not dealing with imaginary numbers. And so, again, if there's no number written here, it's automatically understood to be a 2. If it's supposed to be anything else, it will be written. So if it's supposed to be a 3, it will absolutely be written. If it's supposed to be a 4 or 5 or 6, it will be written. Otherwise, you're never going to see a 2 here. Nobody ever uses that 2 because it's automatically understood. If there's no number there, it's a 2. So let's go ahead and actually tackle number 2, the question that they're asking us. So negative radical 625, that's okay. And if you watched our first video, you will recall that all this is saying is evaluate the radical first. Evaluate what's inside this box. Whatever that answer is, put a negative at the beginning of it. All right, so let's go ahead and evaluate this. And one of the rules of radicals when you're dealing with a fraction under the radical is you can go ahead, if it helps you, you can split the radical up into 2 separate radicals like this. So you can take the radical of 625, or the square root of 625, and then you can take the square root of 9, and that'll give you an answer. Or if you're comfortable dealing with the radical like this, that's certainly okay. So again, your chart, you utilize your chart if you have one. Your chart may not go high enough to show you what the square root of 625 is, and if it doesn't, go ahead and utilize your calculator. And if you insert what the square root of 625 is on your calculator, you're going to get 25. And again, all that's negative on the outside is saying is evaluate what the square root of 625 is. Well, we did that and we get 25, and now just put that minus sign out front. And now over, well, what is the square root of 9? Well, again, what number squared gives us 9? Well, 3, right? And so our final answer is negative 25 over 3.